Hi, I'm Reed, this is Crowland Publishing, and welcome back to Hooks, which is our series on, unsurprisingly, campaign hooks. And today we are talking about military campaigns in D&D. Now, when I say the words military campaign, you probably think about sitting around, planning, really going, okay, well, if you guys hit the front gate, we can hit the rear, we can distract them over there, we can, sniper fire with our archers over here, and making up complicated plans, and then 6-hour-long fight scenes as that sort of stuff happens and it goes down. We all know that D&D fighting can be a bit slow, but nevertheless, military campaigns can be that. They can be really complex military slogs. They can have a lot of shooting. They can have a lot of combat. That can be the emphasis. It can be a lot of fun. It's great fun to lob a grenade into a rat's nest of Nazis or goblins or Sabbat vampires or whatever. And it's fun to conceptualize great plots and to execute them. And it's fun to feel like a military badass. It's fun to feel like you were a kick-ass soldier. But military fiction is a lot more complex than just die, Fritzy Bloodbeast, die! Or, techno-thriller stuff. Like I pull out my 9mm Parabellum spring-loaded precision-engineered pistol with loaded man-stopper full metal jacket rounds. All that sort of stuff. I'm not really into that sort of stuff. I imagine a lot of people listening to this aren't really into that sort of stuff. But nevertheless, military campaigns are really surprisingly rich and complex and interesting role-playing challenges. There's a lot of drama that you can get out of military stories. Now, military fiction has been around as long as there's been fiction. It clearly fascinates the human race. War and writing about war. Now, you can go and you can read a million action books or see a million action movies or read a million action comics for ideas. But we're a narrative gaming channel. We want to look for drama. We want to look for characters, beats, and stories and narratives that are specific to military dramas. So, I would highly recommend The Good Soldier Spec, for example. Great favorite of mine. It is about a soldier who is lost in a bewildering Kafkaesque World War I. Piece of Cake, another great favorite. Good book, okay miniseries, is about the class system in the World War II British Air Force and the grim psychology of men who know that they might die and die badly very soon. Shakespeare's Henry plays are about war as both a source of horror and a source of glory, and it tracks the changing roles that take place over the war. Falstaff, perhaps Shakespeare's greatest creation, and he had a few pretty good ones, is a drunken fool and a bit of a coward during the war, but when the war is over, this stalwart companion and great drinking buddy is an embarrassment and a fool and is thrown into jail. I love, and we're going to talk about these a lot towards the end, the Gaunt Ghost books by Dan Abnett. Sharp in space. A platoon of regular men and women during the horrific wars of the horror science fiction fantasy of the Warhammer 40,000 setting. There is complicated dramas in those troops. There is strain with the high commands. There is the price of fame, the price of success. There is fantastic plots like a serial killer joins the ranks and begins to hunt the rest of the ghosts. Oh, cool, you bastard, I hate you. We'll come back to them, like I said, but they are an endless source of really, really interesting ideas for role-playing within a military setting. There's loads of military fantasy, actually. We'll talk a little bit more about them later on. But I would also recommend that you have a look at literally any of the thousands of books by ex-soldiers and ex-military guys to draw on. Recently, I read Quixote in Ramadi. It's about a Native American woman and her experiences serving in the American military. We Were Soldiers Once and Young is a particularly poignant book. And I really, really like Bury in My Heart, A Wounded Knee, which is a discussion about General Custer. Now, all these writers can wring a lot of drama out of being in the army, not just stories about combat and violence and tactics. And so can you. So that's all the concepts. Here's the execution. Here's how we're going to actually do our military fantasy game. So as a DM, the first thing that you want to do is think about the actual war itself. Is it a civil war? Are you invading someone? Are you being invaded? Is this a monster invasion? Is it a person invasion? Do the PCs care? Or are they just professional soldiers and this is just another job? Now, I would highly recommend, and you can do whatever you like with this, but I would highly recommend this. Have a small unit of regulars whose job is to go behind enemy lines. Being in a big unit, in a big army, is fun, but the role-playing elements can be hard to develop. The 40k game, Only War, has an interesting system where you play a lot of people in a regiment, but that's not really our sort of thing. What you want is to have a party that can operate fairly independently behind enemy lines, and that's sort of like irregulars and scouts and that sort of business. Then you want to think about the army that you're in. Are they partisans or guerrillas? Are you fighting invaders? Are you serving a lord? Are you something like German Imperial Knights, where you're in the service to a king or an emperor directly and hostile to the private armies of barons and dukes who serve the emperor? Are they mercenaries fighting only for coin and willing to change sides? What's the nature of the army as well? Are they professional? Are they peasant levies? Or are you a client to an emperor like, say, barbarians who worked for the Roman Empire? Then, do you want your sergeant, you want your officers to be PCs or NPCs? Do you want to have a very strong, what they call military specialisms, which I would highly recommend? Do you want to make them, say, an all-paladin corps? Do you want to make them an all-mage corps? Do you want to make them an all-wizard corps? These are questions that you should ask your players going in, seeing what their idea of what military fantasy might be. Then there's the baddies, the enemy. Now, this is fantasy, so yeah, sure, you can have like a rival state attacking, you can have a simple civil war scenario breakout, but I think it's more interesting to really ramp up the fantasy. Now, D&D specifically, enemy militaries, there's a few classics to choose from. Orc hordes from a kind of Moria, invading the surface by mind flayers, invading the surface by dark elves, dragons and their draconians or dragonborn servants, undead hordes under the sway of a necromancer or a vampire king or a lich lord. That's never ever going to go out of style. Hobgoblins are often kind of flavoured as a Genghis Khan style horde. You can do enemy nations, but I think that we can do a bit more daring than even these sort of traditional enemies. Fiends from hell. Devils are often perceived as lawful. You can have them as fascist ranks coming out of hell. Aberrations invading from other dimensions, full on Lovecraftian war. What about all the other Underdark races who aren't Dark Elves and who aren't Mind Flayers? What if the Myconids, the Dark Folk, and the Svirfneblin gnomes decide that they are sick and tired of living down in the dark with all these crazy bastards and they want the surface? What about an invasion from fairy? Powerful satyrs and nymphs on unicorns. An army so beautiful it sends people insane, when the Twilight Twig, when the Eosh rise once, I don't know what they're bloody called, ride once again from the forests. What if the elements war on each other and the human world is caught in between? Gnomes with steampunk tech in a medieval world. Elves, sick of humanity's wasteful pollution, decides that they're going to take care of us like we take care of weeds in the garden. Sahuagin, maniac pirates rise up. The Kraken Lords decide that at last humanity and the land must fall. But the good news is, the actual structure of a military campaign is very, very simple. You slowly build your way up with difficulties and importance of missions. So at first you're just blowing up a bridge, then you're killing enemy generals of the invasion, then you're blowing up the Death Star and fighting the enemy god or whatever, and you win, and you've won the war. Now, we need to talk a little bit about actual adventures. Now, the bad news is for DMs is that this isn't the kind of game where you can just let players generate ideas. You need to have a pretty good idea of what the missions are going to be. So, traditional military missions are scouting, raiding for supplies, destroying enemy assets, which could be food, bridges, whatever, liberating slaves, assassinating enemy NCOs. And the reason why we want to have a actual role for the unit, the military unit that your PCs play, is that will influence what kind of adventures you go on. For example, if you've decided that you want to play a group of Marines, you're going to be on ships a lot. You're going to be fighting naval battles. If you're a group of Paladins, you're probably going to be there to confront demons and undead. It's just a matter of specifically tailoring your skills as a group to your adventures as a DM. So there's a few challenges to adventure design for military campaigns because you want your players to feel like they're in the army. So give them a primary goal and secondary goals. They have specific and concrete goals which they need to achieve, which in just a regular treasure hunting campaign they might not. The more goals they complete, the more XP they get, the more glory they get. And I like to award XP in these sorts of adventures not on baddies killed, but on squad goals achieved. Then you probably want to have ways to gear up like players do again in a regular treasure hunting game. So you might want to create a kind of reward system you can be equipped with for specific missions, not keep, equipped with different magical items for different kind of jobs. So if you're going to do a sniping assassination job, magical arrows. If you're going to do infiltration jobs, you might get something like infiltration halo suits, which in fantasy terms is a cloak of the bat. Maybe you're given a sphere of annihilation as the big bomb that you must plant. Night vision goggles in the form of goggles of night. And the more your team succeeds, the more they get to keep these things or are rewarded with them permanently. Yes, it's unbalanced. Yes, that's part of the fun. And always remember the dial. If you're just fighting some hobgoblins on ponies, that's low fantasy. Move the dial further and further up to where you're riding dragons over Ultima Thule to dethrone the Witch Queen Bride of Cthulhu, that's high fantasy. It's just a matter of taste. But war has many role-playing opportunities, and military campaigns have many role-playing opportunities. Now, I'm going to hang this discussion on the very popular and the very good books, the Gaunt's Ghost series by Dan Abnett. I think that these are probably the best military science fiction fantasy books ever written, and I want to be friends with the writer Dan Abnett. I love him, and there are other books, but it's my video, so Gaunt's Ghosts. So in case you somehow don't know it, the Warhammer 40,000 universe is a fantasy in space, pretty much. Now, the first two books in this Gaunt's Ghosts are about irregular light infantry, and they specialize in stealth and guerrilla missions. Now, this is ideal, as we've talked about, for D&D because you're already dealing with small groups of skilled and diverse, talented people. And the first thing that most people notice about the Ghosts is that there are fantastic characters. Mad Larkin, the sniper, a guy who's almost but not quite spectacularly mental. The former criminal, the very, very dangerous Rawn, who's sort of the Starscream here. Tony Crid, the former punk turned the utterly professional soldier. Ludd, who's supposed to be a discipline officer, but he's not very good. McCall, the head of scouts. Oh my god, he's so cool. He has this thing with an anti-tank mine that's just next level. And what we should learn from all this is that this is the place for really big characters. Military invites big characters. Military fiction has big characters. Military history has big characters. And then there's the plots. What can we learn from them? How can this inform our D&D? Book 1. The Ghosts make fools of a rival section of the army, but that entire section of the army is made of aristocrats. They believe that war is only a thing that the blue-blooded can participate in. So suddenly, guys who are your allies become your enemies. Now, the third book is a big Battle of Stalingrad type situation, big urban war. Many of the ghosts die, and a whole bunch of new characters are inducted into the book and into the regiment. And we see them struggle to learn one another's strengths, military. We see them understand each other's cultures slowly but surely. And that's always an interesting role-playing point of view. If you've got two PCs who don't really know each other and who come from very different backgrounds, allow them to butt heads. And as well in Book 3, some very bad people join the cast, so you can have villains on your side. Book 4, the ghost must protect sacred relics from the demon-worshipping cults, and a terrible evil wizard is chasing them down. There's a big last stand at the end, and it's during this big last stand that they come to the attention of spiritual powers. Book 5, they must kill an evil paladin who commands a city, but he has a whole bunch of specialist evil troops. This is not a job that the Gaunt's Ghosts excel at, but if they win, it will make a general look good. That is a great hook for a D&D game. Go and do this hard mission because it makes me look good, not because I think that you'll survive. Immediately you've got tension with the big brass. Immediately you've got the resentment of the troops. Am I risking my life for someone else's glory? Great hooks for role-playing. In Book 6, the ghosts are put into World War II trench warfare, which again they're not good at, but the snobs from Book 1 are finally back for revenge. Book 7, a saint is reborn, and because of Book 4, she requests the ghosts protect her from monstrous assassins, including the evil wizard from before, and the dark powers. They find a serial killer in the ranks of the ghosts and give him some warlock levels. That's my fave book. A lot of plots come to a head. You can have a look at the Malazan books, again, military fantasy. The second book is that the Empire must escort a refugee train across the land in revolt. And as if mad shadow cultists weren't enough, this is happening while two sects of shape-changing monsters are flocking back to secret places and sacred places. In another book, a tribe of wild elves unite under a mighty paladin, and they attack a mercantile empire. This is a book that is just filled with ideas for cool military campaigns and missions. Look at films. Aliens, Dog Soldiers, Predator, Ravenous. There's a Korean TV show that I love called The Kingdom. Coming up with cool scenarios for military campaigns is not going to be the problem. Creating characters that you have a lot of friction with that's what really sets a military campaign apart from other kinds of D&D. You need to have people that you can conflict with without weapons because you're soldiers. You are outranked by a lot of these people. You will just get executed. You need to have your players understand that they're not going to win everything with swords. Not the conflicts that matter, which is the conflicts against their own sides. So there we have it. Think of what kinds of enemies you want to fight. Think of what kinds of actual army units you want to fight. Think about the kind of war that you want to fight. Think about rich characters, loads of tension. Think about the politics that are behind this sort of thing. Think about divided loyalties. Think about the psychological trauma of war. Think about the juicy role-playing stuff. Go and watch some military fiction that's not about guns, that's not about battles, that's about life in the military. Breaker Morant is a great one. So I've mentioned a bunch of books, I've mentioned a bunch of movies. Go have a read of them, take them, steal from them. That's what fiction is for. So that's military campaigns. I'm Reed, this is Crowland Publishing. Why don't you hit that like button? Go on. Hey up. Gonna talk politics next time. See ya.